happening. So I know my perspective on from Dr. King is different than some of yours in here. So I hope we can share, as I said earlier, an authoritative understanding. The crucial piece of scripture that I want to hold up for us today it's in red today in the first part of that page 1. Jesus has this is Jesus' first teaching in Luke. He'd already done the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are the peacemakers. That was his first sermon. And then after that, this is his first teaching. And we get a sense with this being the first recording of his teaching that this might have been his bread and butter. This might have been one of the sermons he preached over and over again. Because as you know, preachers only have one sermon. It's over and over again, over and over again. So, do what now? You don't think that? There are many different characters, but it's one sermon over and over again. We all have one kind of sermon over and over again. This might have been Jesus' one sermon. I say to you that listen, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from anyone who takes away your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. Give to everyone who begs from you. And if anyone takes away your goods, do not ask for them again. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even the sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. If you lend to those from who you hope receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to the sinners to receive as much again. But love your enemies, do good, lend, expect nothing in return. Your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, for He is kind and grateful. And He is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful. So, this being Jesus' first teaching out of the bat, or one that's recorded, really does go against everything we know in our human condition. Because the human condition, although we're made in God's image, the human condition can also be afraid and be self-centered. The human condition can also have a sense of wanting for my own self, my own survival. And here, Jesus, the one who's been given the great revelation, the way you save yourself is not even looking out for yourself, but looking out for the cares and needs of others, and that will be your pathway into the heart of God. Even to the point that when you are struck by someone, you don't retaliate. Even to the point if someone doesn't have a coat, you give them yours. It's a hard message that I think throughout our entire life we're trying to learn that, to undo the inward focus of me, turn it outwards to live with others. Jesus seemed to be asking to do this in a non-violent way. And so that's what I want to say to you today is, for me, the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King has opened up my eyes of how Jesus changed the world through nonviolent action. So that's what I'm going to promote today. You see a little circle on your handout? I wonder if you could just take your finger and just kind of cross through it with your finger on horizontally if you can. You mind doing that? If you got a fingernail, you can maybe even make a little indent in the paper. Because the psychologist will say that's how our brain is. Our brain is aware, if you did it right in the middle, our brain is aware, conscious of half things, but then up under there's a subconscious that a lot of times we're just functioning on autopilot. A lot of times we aren't even thinking. Think about those of you who drive. Even though I know, Randy, you teach driver's ed, so I'm going to go again. But driving, after you've mastered it, or after you've done it for a few years, can almost be an unconscious autopilot act. And that's not all bad. I mean, that kind of gets us places. We learn it, we can feel, we can intuit it. Did I get that right? Is that true? Is that true? Yes.
Sometimes it's not a good thing.
Sometimes it's not. Yes.
We're not paying attention to our surroundings.
Amen.
Anything.
Staying alert, but if anybody's driven for a few years, at first it's so exciting and it's so powerful, but then, after you do it a few years, it's just like a rote thing. And when the next generation starts flying spaceships, they're going to think it's exciting at first. Then after that, it's going to come auto. We all have an autopilot. We all have an unconscious. I would say around our journey into being nonviolent people, practicing one of the first teachings that Jesus laid out. This is how we're going to change the world together. Some of it is conscious. A lot of it is unconscious. So I hope what we say today might bring that scratch mark on the circle just a little bit lower for each and every one of us, if that makes sense.
Hey.
Yes.
Hey, Dickie.
Hi, Dickie.
Hey, Dickie.
We have a little thing going on.
Thank you.
We got you.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
the first time I really heard the I Have a Dream speech, that's when I went out and bought a book of Dr. King's called Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. I have at the bottom of page 1 just that pump of when he's at the end. It's 1963. He's at the Lincoln Memorial. There's masses of crowds there. Was anybody in that crowd? Did you know anybody who was in that crowd? No? Okay. But you've heard this part. You know it. So I say to you today, my friends, I'll read this first paragraph and then somebody else read the next the stanza. I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. Who will go next?
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Go. Thank you.
I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together.
I have a dream that one day, even in the state of Mississippi, the state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice.
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
So, share. When I heard that speech, I mean, I've probably heard it, but in my 20s, I really heard it. It just made utmost sense to me. It promoted a vision sort of for me. When you heard it for the first time, what did it invoke for you? Can you remember? When you really heard it, maybe for the first time?
Brenda.
Some of us are a older than the rest of you. I was a junior in high school when he did his speech, and I had a former Marine teacher. He had retired from the Marine Corps, and we listened. We listened as a group. We went home. We had a paper to write about it. I had grown up in the Navy. Now, my father was a white military man. He retired on the coast, and everywhere I lived, everybody lived together. So I can remember that next day telling his name was Cersei, telling Mr. Cersei that that was a dream that was fulfilled in the military. And he looked at me and he said, but you're a Navy brat. The rest of these people don't understand. But it was, those times were trying times. I was a junior in high school when Dr. King was assassinated, junior in college at Millsaps. And the same thing again, we all listened. The whole dorm, back in those days, you had one little TV in the living area. And we all were crowded around watching and listening and in total shock because he had become an icon of the period. And it was hard for us to understand that that would happen in Memphis, which was our next door neighbor. And so it was just such a trying time. And I can remember assassination of Kennedy. It was November of '63, and we were having our junior play that night, and there were people that said, well, let's go on with the show. And we were all so shocked we couldn't as children. And so all of us have different ways of feeling things, but it was a shocking time to live.
Thank you. When you heard that speech, really heard it for the first time or in any way, what did it say to you? How'd you hear it?
I remember just because I lived through that too. I hate to say it, but I couldn't help thinking, that's a great dream, but I don't know where the next city is going to be. I hope your dream stays alive. I hope that somehow or another happens, but I just see too much then. I saw too much hate, too much anger to believe it could really happen.
Right. Who else, when you first heard it? What did it mean to you?
Well, you know, I live in Colorado when I heard it. Colorado's so far removed from all of the issues that were going on at the time. Speech came on. Socialism, our civilization, our life, our world, it's a southern issue and whatever the case may be. But my cousin was there. Called out. And he came home and told us that. And it changed the whole narrative of this is a movement that needs to change America, not just the folks that were pushing. So it did kind of memorialize that. Expanded. There was a demarcation, you know, both the Mason-Dixon line and the Mississippi River, and the rest of the country was not caught up there until that moment.
They expanded the circle.
Good morning, dear children.
Hey, Bill.
Say Sam.
Like your father for that.
Like him. Y'all weren't the first ones.
Thank you, Bert. Anybody else?
I think I was a 73, born a 73 baby, but I think for some growing up in South Louisiana, part of the schools, I was a minority in my junior high in a few classes. Through the athletic world, of course, we talk about the Navy, you know, those things. I grew up with folks of a different color and never really, those stuff was, I guess because a lot of that movement had passed, it kind of set the path for our generation. I will say today, though, I say it all the time, that I wish there was something, I wish there was a way to keep him, Martin Luther King, deal going and alive. And unfortunately, the parchment stuff, you know, I mean, there's so many violent lives, I guess. And a lot of it's drugs and those things, but I just wish so many other people, not just in the path of trying to get the black and white together, but in the path of especially some of the African American side of families now, that here's a man that stood up, gave his life to give all of us an opportunity to be one. And kind of like Ray, unfortunately, you know, as a realist, has it come a long way? Yes, absolutely. But then you still look around, you know, 100 murders in Jackson, Mississippi, however many in Chicago, Illinois, however many in Memphis, you know, all these towns that Martin Luther King focused on. It's still a lot of violence, and it's not necessarily a black and white thing anymore. And I think the dream that he's laid down there needs to be listened to by a lot of, you know, other than just a segregation type thing.
Right.
I wish he was still alive.
But I was coming out of the context different. I was in Greenville. I went to a private school, and the only time even though we had a maid that would come and help, it was super segregated. I can remember though, and I've told you all this story about Chuck. One summer, I was 14. I was working for the Mississippi Levee Board. It was a crew of 10. I was the youngest, and I was the only white kid there. All the rest were adult men, African American, and all of a sudden, a glimpse of hope came to me, because for a month it was just me and these men, and I just felt so awkward and so out of place. I'd have to ride in the back of the truck. I mean, I would. I mean, you know, when we were going out into the field. But the foreman's son, Chuck, came to work in July, and he was like my savior. I was so bored. I was so mad and frustrated, and here was Chuck, who was just as mad and just as frustrated as me, because his dad was making him work this job in the same form and fashion that my dad was making me work this job, and we bonded. And then after that, I never heard of Chuck really again. I'd heard that he went on to play football, but I never really heard of him again. And so when I finally heard I have a dream speech, it's just like, yes, I wanted some of that. I knew I'd made a connection, and I just wanted some of it more and more. So when I heard the dream, it was just like, let me read more of his work. I did find out as I dug deeper into his work that the FBI called him the most dangerous Negro in the United States. The FBI also secretly taped him and exposed that he was a womanizer, and he had trouble. He was unfaithful in his relationship. I will say to you, every person is fighting something. So I hear that, and that conditions his message some. But I realized it wasn't his message really. It was the story of the gospel coming on and on again, that we change the world not through brute or might or force, but through nonviolence. It's almost like that's God's plan. It circles back to our Christmas story. Where did God enter the world. Not through a lightning bolt, not through an earthquake splitting the sides, not through great floods anymore, but God enters the world as a little baby who can't really defend itself. A nonviolent baby, and we're drawn to this love. We're drawn to this Christ child. We're drawn to our future self, which is the Christ child, which lives inside of each of us, and we're beckoned forward by this love to enter into this nonviolent grace of sorts. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I mean, this is easy peasy. Thanks for listening and playing along with me. But the whole notion of nonviolence lit up for me how Christianity made sense. Because again, that circle again, I'd put Jesus on the pedestal, and I'd had that in my mind, and I'd drawn a line through that circle in my mind of having Jesus conscious of it, but I hadn't done the other step until, and Dr. King helped me as a minister to say, not only do I put Jesus up on a pedestal and believe all the doctrines, but I also do the subconscious work of putting him right in my heart. So the mind is essential, but it's only half of the story. How does someone embody love? How does someone enflesh the gospel? And I saw it in this non-violent movement, which made total sense to me. So in that book, where do we go from here, chaos or community, he lays out these principles of nonviolence that I have on page 2. These principles of nonviolence. And then there's some steps. I know you've heard all this. Number 1, nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. Number 2, the second principle, nonviolence seeks to win friendships and understanding. 3, nonviolence seeks to defeat injustice, not people. Number 4, nonviolence holds that suffering can educate and transform. Number 5, nonviolence chooses love instead of hate. Number 6, nonviolence believes that the universe is the side of justice. So to me, when I was reading those principles, it was just making sense to me that this is how Jesus enfleshed the world. This is how Jesus created a movement. This is how Jesus was the face of God, God who is nonviolent for us now. And it's these 6 steps of nonviolence. Number 1, gather information, learn as much as you can. You'll hear today in the scripture, Jesus will say, repent, the kingdom of heaven is near. One of our first understandings as Christians is that we get the world wrong a lot. That we need a clearer vision. We need a Savior to help us see things clearly. And so, number 1 stance of nonviolence is one of humility, of knowing that you get it wrong all the time. You and I get it wrong all the time. So you're always open to learning. The second step, educate others. And once you've been given a new knowledge and you're humbled by it, it's our duty to help those around us. Sometimes with great oratory, sometimes with sharing books, but for the most time, really educating others by being a radiant light ourselves. The third step in this nonviolence is to remain committed to walk forward into a new frontier with an awakened heart. But you're always walking into a brand new frontier. Fourth step, peaceful negotiations. talk with both sides. 5th, take actions peacefully. 6, you're always trying to reconcile. So his life and legacy gives me that, besides him being a great orator. I also really like the fact that it was a pastoral need. Pastoral in a preacher's life, that's really what changes us, I think, is when a pastoral need arises. A pastoral need arose in the 1970s in the Episcopal Church for women's ordination. There were women feeling called to the priesthood and proclaiming it, and the Episcopal Church had this traditional understanding that it was a men's role. A pastoral need came up, and once the church recognized that pastoral need, the church moved on it. Same thing with the LGBT community. When it became for priesthood, when it became for marriage, a pastoral need rose up. And I will say, as a preacher, as a pastor, people would come to me and speak to me, and it would just spark in my mind, oh, I get to move on this. And this is how the church changes through pastoral needs. I'm looking forward to what the next pastoral need presents itself. I hope we all stay humble and ready to move on it. So if you're looking on page 3, here are just some of his quotes. I was going to play you a bunch of sermons and speeches and everything else, but I already think we got his words in this room. I already think we have wisdom in this room to kind of bounce things off. And on page 3, let's just kind of reflect on each one of these and just see what kind of comes to us as we hear it. I wish I knew exactly where these quotes came from, and which actual, if it's letters or if it's the spoken word. But life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? When we wake up in the morning, that is rarely my first question. It is rarely my first question. It's like coffee, tired. What a powerful practice of being a nonviolent Christian person walking into this world by leaving that self again and walking out. Now, what, Lord, you're going to put someone in my life, Lord. How can I serve them today? How can I be an instrument of your grace to them? What am I doing for others today? Who will read that second one? Power without love.
Power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. And justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against the law.
Everyone must decide whether he or she will walk in a life of creative altruism or in the darkness of destructive selfishness. This next one I really like. Someone read that, will you? Please.
I have decided to stick with love. Hate is so great a burden to bear.
What do y'all think about that? Question, Andy. I decided to stick with love. Hate is too great of a burden to bear.
Because hate changes the way your perspective is, not only just in your relationships, but just in your attitude. If you have a burden in your heart that you're carrying hate against something or someone, then you don't grow spiritually.
I think it sucks your energy. It just, going to be exhausting.
Hate's such a strong word. I think even it may not be hate. Sometimes it might be maybe a misunderstanding or not fully knowledgeable. That can be confused, or fear that can be confused for hate. I think maybe some of that combined may make hate. Does that make sense?
Fear plus prejudice equals hate.
And a lot of that, down his wall was a bird that said, you fighting your love side fights the hate side. I mean, obviously there's things that we don't agree with fully, whatever it may be in life that we cross.
Thank you.
Something that's helped me is remember to take it to the Lord in prayer.
Take it to the Lord in prayer. Tell us more about that.
There have been times I was a little bit disturbed about certain things that I had hated in my lifetime. And it's not something I'm proud of. But I did notice how having that sort of attitude wears one, even though like the sunshine and everything about the other Thanksgiving, and you're like, there's one thing, just eating away at it, this will not do it. So I take it to the Lord in prayer, and I leave it in His hands. And I've been relieved of it, praise Jesus. I don't think about it anymore. I don't let it weigh on me anymore.
Take it to the Lord in prayer. Do you do hand motions? Do you do it with your mind? Do you do it with your heart? Do you say it? I do hand motions. I do like, get it out. Get it off of me. Please. That toxic energy. Get it. Man must evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love. I know I've shared with you all stories of how getting paddled at school or getting threatened by authority figures. That would be a fear for me. It helped control me socially some. I'd always get out of the line, but it never changed me. It was not until somehow I would fall in love with something, and that is what changed me. That great story of the dragon, the fire-breathing dragon, falls in love, and the lover of the fire-breathing dragon says, one thing you can do for me is just pull off one scale a day. And so, drawn by love, the dragon pulled off one scale a day. And he noticed, after being drawn into this love more and more, that each day the fire inside of him became less. And the skin, the scales were less. And you know where the story is going. It turns into a handsome prince or a lovely princess. But we just pull one scale off a day, and the fire inside of us is transformed. And I think that's our journey. I think it's a white person's journey, a person of color. That is our journey to be in love. That is our journey. I appreciate this one. Everybody can be great because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. If I cannot do great things, I can do small things in a great way. We can no longer afford to worship the God of hate or bow before the altar of retaliation. The oceans of history are made turbulent by the ever-rising tides of hate. History is cluttered with the wreckage of nations and individuals. Nonviolence is a powerful and just weapon. Indeed, it is a weapon unique in history, which cuts without wounding and ennobles the man who wields it. I think that's a powerful notion about nonviolence. That it's not only getting your way, but it's a transformation of the person. It is sacrificing your body and your ego and yourself in order to help change the other person as well. That's a spiritual act that I'm not too good at. I like being right. I like staying in my comfort zone. My hurts and the hate I still have inside of me somehow comforts me. Somehow gives it, or maybe I've just become used to it, you know. And the times I realize I've become used to it is when I fall in love with whatever I was hating in a certain way. I'm still such an unfinished guy. There should be a sign that says construction happening right here.
Hey, Josephine.
Hey, Josephine.
I'm trying to make you feel good.
Andy started.
Whatever I just caught it.
It's pretty amazing. Hey, who will read that piece from one of his last speeches on page 5? Can you do that? Thank you, Christian. Yes, sir.
Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop and I don't mind if anybody. I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will, and He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. My eye sets in the glory of the coming of the Lord.
So, can we share about a mountaintop experience we might have had when you've seen it happen? Where you've seen the sons and daughters of slave owners and the sons and daughters of slaves come together around a welcome table, where you yourself have been in a place of love and not fear.
I think as a teacher, I don't know if you can bear this out, but I'm more optimistic that we're going to see this because for one of my projects I did last semester, I interviewed a young lady from River City Early College. And she's like, well, it matters more to our parents, but we don't really care about that stuff. And the interview was about racial differences and any other differences, so LGBT, whatever the case, and she's going, just among ourselves, those things don't really matter. They matter to our parents and our grandparents, but, we're just friends. So, I thought that was pretty neat.
Thank you, Bruce. Where have you been in the mountaintop? Where have you seen it? Where have you gotten a glimpse of it?
I went to a family reunion a long time. It's been a minute because by then they were both still healthy here. And it was at Ward Hall in Kentucky. And my mother was Ward. Her family's the Ward family. And so we go to this family reunion, and it's the plantation owners and the slaves. And I met some beautiful cousins that had gorgeous skin and big blue eyes. My mother, myself, my daughter, Elizabeth. We were the only wards there, and it was really intimidating. And that it was the first time I was kind of horrified because they told our history, and the Ward family was one of the largest slave-owning families in the country.
Where was this?
Kentucky. We were hemp farmers, and I should have stayed with this. Moved to the Delta in Mississippi, and were cotton owners and had lots of slaves there also. So these are beautiful people. A lot of them live in Kansas, and it was an experience that I still have to. Anita George is kind of helping me lead because it kind of goes all the way back around to her. Because one of my relatives owned the house that she and her family lived in, the little carriage house behind.
Oh.
So, full circle. Definitely did not grow up that way. My father was chaplain at Mississippi State in 1968, 67 when I was born, and he never told his story as some have, which I'm glad Duncan did. But my dad was very humbled by it, and he definitely supported those boys. Ate at our house before they were killed on the Freedom Ride. And my brothers could probably tell the story. They were teenagers, but I was baby. But Daddy never told it, so it's not my story.
The mountaintop. When have you been to the mountaintop? When have you seen it? What gave you the glimpse?
I think for me on the other end, from the plantation stuff or whatever, my daddy's mother, Granny Broom, 7th grade education. She was a sharecropper. Daddy didn't grow up with not a whole lot of money, picking cotton. Granny worked in the parachute factories during World War. She passed away, every one of her fingertips from picking cotton and sewing were constantly stuck. A one-room apartment. You know, anytime we were a kid, I always laughed. We'd have, there'd be welfare cheese, a hot dog wiener, and black-eyed peas, usually out of a garden. And that's when we were grandkids at her house, and this, you know, it's her bed, oven, stove, you know, the toilet and the shower, just a curtain in the corner. But we were, she was in heaven. I mean, she's a couple of these scriptures here about giving. She had nothing to give, but yet she always gave. You know, never owned a driver's license. And one of her best friends that would come by and see and hang with her was a black woman who would take her to the grocery store, or, you know, whatever to eat. And it just kind of, it was normal for us growing up, heard stories or whatever. My daddy made pretty good money, worked at a refinery until he retired. She didn't want any of that. She was happy and as content as she could be right across from First Baptist Church that, you know, where she lived her life. So on that end of things, you kind of see where love for Jesus, for God, it was an epitome of my grandmother. Never asked for a thing.
Been to the mountaintop. One other story. Who's seen the mountaintop? Who's been up there?
I get glimpses of it just in, they don't want me to put them on the spot, but every now and then I'm talking to kids and I realize, oh, you don't see the world the way I do. No. And that just gives me great joy. I mean, not that I see the world in that way, but, you know, I was born in 1968. I have my own experience in Laurel, Mississippi, and that, you know, and that really colors everything, the way I see the world. But when I talk to them, and sometimes they look at me like, what are you talking about, Mom? And I realize, oh, they don't see the world the way I do. It's really wonderful.
Amen. So maybe keep the glimpses that we know alive, even though it seems like we're still a sordid people now. We have relationships, each one of us, that have crossed over lines and boundaries. And I don't think we should take those as coincidence at all. I think it's God's kingdom inviting us into being all children of the Most High. All on that journey. No matter what our outward appearance is, we're all on the journey of putting Jesus on a pedestal in our mind and then bringing peace and love into our hearts. We're all on the journey of leaving ourselves to become selfless. And I appreciate you listening today. I really, truly do. It's been fun. Next Sunday, Bertram Davis Hayes is going to help tell his story. Bertram, you want to give us just a highlight?
It is about reconciliation. It really is. It's about where I'm at and how I got there and what I'm doing today. So the Davis part is a little bit of it, but it's more about my story about what I'm doing and how I got there.
Thank you, Bertram, for wrapping that up. Any parting words of wisdom to this amazing group? Teenagers, come on back.